Um, to be honest, I didn't really start off interested in the TC field. When I was going to college, I was originally interested in being a journalist. But I went to college right as the recession hit, and I no longer was able to go out of state to study journalism at some of the schools I had been accepted to. So it was really my parents who pushed me to go to tech because of the scholarship opportunities. And my mom picked technical communication as my major because it was the closest thing to writing available at New Mexico Tech. But as I went through the program, really what started to interest me about the field was just how incredibly broad it was, and how beneficial it was to be so well-rounded, and to have a skill set that could apply to every profession in the world. Well, I got my job because of my degree. My boss has told me time and time again that she picked me out of a pool of very qualified candidates, because I came with a technical background, and not just an English or writing background. So every day it's my job to communicate to donors how important it is that they give my foundation money. But usually the most effective way to do that, when you're being considered with 8 to 10 other similar organizations, is to start to manipulate your numbers, or I guess maybe manipulate isn't the best word, but tweaking your phrasing so that you highlight your statistics in the best way possible. My organization has the reputation it has because of the large quantities of clients we serve. So every day I kind of use, both sides of my brain. I have to be able to communicate and tell a story, but at the same time I'm using very concrete facts and statistics to do so. And it's important that I know how to work with both, but that it's a good balance between the two. Outside of school. Let's see. I think the most valuable skill I learned that I was able to perfect in the classroom, but really I learned outside of the classroom, was how to talk to people, and really understand what matters to them and be able to talk to them about what matters to them, especially in the context of a nonprofit. I got my start with the homeless shelter, and I spent a lot of time going around tech. Tech is not filled with a bunch of people who are doing human services type degrees or work, and I spent a lot of my time at tech trying to talk to other engineers and scientists about the value of human services work and working in nonprofits. So very quickly, just in order to convince my classmates why my interests were worthwhile, I had to become very good at talking to other people and learning what mattered to them, and finding a way to show how what mattered to them could fit into an overall greater concept, I guess, which for me would be nonprofit work. I think that's probably the most valuable skill I learned outside of the classroom. I would say I feel like sometimes it's kind of difficult to know what you want to do, especially 5 or 10 years down the road. I feel like can be very isolating. You're very focused on getting your work done and meeting the demands of college classes and your professors, but it's really important that you start to figure out what general direction you're headed to in life, even if it means figuring out if someday, if you really do want to be a manager, or you really want to have people working under you, or you prefer to not climb the ranks. You just kind of want a job that plateaus, and you don't have to climb the ladder, as it were. Like I said, that's really, really hard to do when you're fresh out of the gate. But one of the first questions my boss asked me in my job interview was where I saw myself in 5 to 10 years. And the reason she asked me that question is because she's doing everything she can to help me reach my own goals and pushing my career along so that I reach those goals faster and more effectively. So I think it's really important that as you start your career, you start making the right moves and the right steps, and being honest with your employer about where you'd like to go in the future. If they're a good boss and a good employer, they're going to help you reach your goals and do what you ultimately want to do for the rest of your life. No, no, it's actually much better than the one I hoped I would always have. I kind of thought the only way I could work in nonprofits was to do grunt work out in the field, not making very much money, very in the trenches kind of work. I never would have imagined how beneficial and how powerful a position a person holds when they sit on the foundation side of a nonprofit. So actually the job I hold now is much better than the one I could have ever imagined for myself. I never realized how important this skill set would become and how valued it is to an organization to be able to raise money effectively. That's a pretty powerful position to play from, and certainly fulfills a dream that was much bigger than the one I was capable of having for myself back when I was planning my career. I definitely look at the other materials that are going out from other organizations that are similar to mine, and I kind of look at how they're using certain tools or techniques to write similar types of work that I'm working on every day. So I definitely look at my peers' work and try and see how do they communicate similar ideas based on their backgrounds and their organization's existing body of work. And then I also take every opportunity I can to be on the other side of the fence. So I'm not only writing grants, but I take opportunities to sit on grant review committees that I can see what the grant review committee considers when they're reviewing 300 or 400 proposals, what stands out to the review committee, so that way I can go back and know kind of how to write my application so that they stand out as well. And then, of course, just a peer review and editing process. All of my work has to be approved by executives before it goes out, especially if it's a particularly large project or a large grant. And that editing process is really helpful. My boss has 15 plus years of development experience that she brings to the table, and she's very good at just adding more polish to my writing and teaching me how to add more polish to my work every day. Yeah, your brain can't be turned on all the time. It's hard to work in a creative position and be creative all the time. I think some people are more inclined towards that than others, but it can be a challenge some days. There are definitely days when I hit a brick wall and I sit there for hours and I can't come up with anything clever, new to say. But I'm very lucky that I work within the campus where a lot of my programs are. So if I'm lacking inspiration, I usually go over and I visit the kids in my ventures program, or the kids in St. Stephen's, or any of the other large projects that I write grants for. And I spend time with them and I ask them questions about what they like about the program and how they'd like to see it improved or changed. And that kind of starts to get my brain going and in the direction of writing another grant. Um, while my agency is in the middle of a sort of trial by fire crisis situation right now, it's continuing to escalate and unfortunately get worse and worse as time goes on. So the workshop was very informative. It definitely highlighted strengths and weaknesses within my own organization, which I'm happy that I know about now, and we're prepared to move forward and address all of those components as we put forth the crisis communication plan. But it was funny. I thought it was very surprisingly simple. But, you know, even the most simple thing like a crisis action plan, which can be anything from just communicating clearly and effectively to your constituents, if somebody doesn't spell those steps out for you easily in a crisis, you lose track of them. And even the most simple game plan becomes very complicated and difficult to follow. So I was pleased that it's not really rocket science, but it's definitely something that everybody needs to be trained in, because in the middle of a crisis, it's too chaotic sometimes to remember everything that you've been taught. Kind of going back to what I was saying before, I mean, it's hard to know what you want to do for a living. As you get out in the world, you know, when I started applying for jobs, even within the general grant writing fields, I started realizing that there were just so many more opportunities out there that I just wasn't even aware of. I had no idea that people did certain things for a living that were really interesting. So I think, you know, like I said, just really try and get a good idea of what you enjoy doing, and then start doing research into how other people also do that for a living, whether it be by going to conferences and meeting other professionals, or talking to your professors, you know, and looking at job ads to see, you know, what do they call certain people who do certain things. I found that really helpful because it's very hard to kind of hit the ground running like I did. I'm very fortunate that I was able to do that. It's hard to get that first job. It's even harder to get the job in the career that you want. I didn't have a degree or anything to help me or back me up in the field in which I work. So I had to turn down, on good faith, a lot of very promising job offers and very good paying jobs in the hope that something better would come along. But I always knew ultimately what I wanted to do, so I was okay with that. Let's see. If I had to give somebody going into college advice, it would be to be very open to learning new things, really take advantage. Everybody says college is your golden years, and you completely ignore that until you're no longer in college, and then you go, yep, those were the golden years. It gets a lot harder as soon as you're done. You'll never be in a place where it's so easy to make friends and it's so easy to get to know people, because you have so much in common in college that becomes incredibly difficult after you leave college and people go off and do their own things. So I would say, you know, be really open to learning new things, meeting new people. There's just no place like college. It's very conducive to learning a lot in a very short amount of time, and to meeting really interesting people who are doing big things in college and who are going to go on to do really big things in life. So make those connections and be nice to your professors, and you know, try not to give them too hard of a time. My favorite memory from tech is, let's see, I really enjoyed any opportunity I had to be on campus with my friends, preferably outside. I live in a very cold place now, and I miss it being a warm and having a nice outdoor space like Tech's campus. It's very beautiful. And just hanging out with my friends and, you know, watching people discover their passions. You know, I had a friend, Ethan Locke, who discovered his love of robotics at Tech, and I enjoyed watching him discover that passion. It's now what he does for a living. Watching my best friend, Elizabeth, discover her love of civil engineering. You know, watching people grow. Any of those opportunities I had to talk to my friends to get to know them better at a really interesting point in their life. All of those are definitely my favorite memories from college.